Welcome to another episode of the Tech Transfer Podcast here at BYU. This is Dave Brown, and today we are asking what is Creative Works? It's a department at BYU that is completely unique. There's not another university with it. And I'm here with the director, Giovanni Tata, and the marketing coordinator, Mary Jo Tansy. So we'll have both of them talk about Creative Works. And Giovanni, do you mind explaining to us what it is and what you do over there?
Well, Creative Works is basically the commercialization of all intellectual property developed at BYU related to content and copyright, which can be distributed outside of BYU. And that includes music, instructional materials, software, always, which includes content, and anything else that developers here on campus, develop. Uh, and we work with all colleges here on campus.
So if there's on the software point, if there's something that's purely commercial, like if it were some auto design software or something, that'd probably be tech transfer. But if there's software that's like lab instruction or something more academic, that'd be Creative
Exactly.
Works, right? Yeah.
If it has content in it, which means that it has some copyrightable material, then the Creative Works office usually handles it. And we've been very successful here at BYU. Most universities do not cover creative works usually because copyright usually is the domain of the faculty member. They develop it, but um, university decided to go ahead and commercialize creative works which had been funded by the university. So if a faculty member writes a book, it belongs to the faculty member. But if a faculty member is paid to write a book, then that belongs to the university. So if a faculty member, for example, receives a leave of absence to write something, then the university claims ownership of the material. And this is covered by the intellectual property policy at the university, which is very generous towards faculty member. In fact, faculty members receive 45% of all revenue that the university receives from the royalties or other type of revenue that is generated by the creative works.
And Giovanni, when you mentioned that other universities don't do this, is I think from my perspective, part of the reason is because at least you don't expect Creative Works to be as lucrative as some large commercial technology. That's you've had some actually pretty big hits from Creative Works, but I think at other universities people might assume that our efforts are best spent on commercializing very commercial things.
Yes, exactly. In fact, the majority of the creative works developed on campus produce very little revenue. But of course, we have had several stories at BYU because some of the products that were developed received a very wide audience in the universities or even in the private sector. So when you talk about creative works, most of the time you're talking about small royalties that the developers would receive from the publisher. And in most cases, that's the domain of the faculty member. And they'll go ahead and find a publisher. But if the university sponsored the project, then the university has to worry about what do we do with this product. And usually we try to find somebody to license that product to. In most cases, is a publisher. In some cases, we've been very successful in licensing the material to some small software company that have been fairly successful, or local publishers, that cater to BYU audience.
And just in case Giovanni isn't willing to brag about himself, which he probably isn't, he has great connections with all kinds of major publishing companies and was very entrepreneurial before he came to BYU.
Right. I started two small software companies, local software companies here in Utah, and because of that, I got involved with publishers, and that's why when this position became available, I was hired to be the founding director of the Creative Works office.
Yeah, and so how long has Creative Works been around?
27 years now,
27.
and we've done fairly well. Of course, the copyright area of the industry has been changing rapidly through the years, and we've had to adapt. And we'll talk about that a little more when we talk about some of the successful products that we've had.
Okay, so BYU launched its tech transfer office sometime around 1982 after Bayh-Dole was passed. And then a decade later, they realized, no, there's this other niche, the licensed creative works. And then in Creative Works, you have the licensing that Giovanni's talking about, and then Mary Jo, your role is a little bit different. What do you do?
Yes, well, that goes back to your question of how our um, projects come through our office. We have
Hmm.
two major prongs. One, Giovanni tries to license it to a company
Hmm.
that has a niche market, or they have their contacts that can promote the product much better than we can.
Hmm.
If we can't do that, then we try to sell it in-house. And so we have several websites set up, different ways to present a product for sale, and then we sell it from our own websites.
So you're selling actual products, which is different from tech transfer. We license everything out, but you have actual products you sell. And I know that they include BYU LDS classics like the Mailbox and Cipher in the Snow
Mhm.
and old videos like that that a lot of us remember. What are some other products that are good for you?
Well, we have some products that we turned into online subscriptions. They at
Hmm.
one time had been DVDs,
Hmm.
and we turned them into an online subscription. We have some what they call tangible property. We still have prints from one of our BYU artists that we sell,
Hmm.
and a few other books, and actually there's a few DVDs that still sell.
Hmm.
And so we have a website that just does the tangible property, and we have the digital downloads, which are tend to be software or music. We have a few music items on there still, and
Right.
pretty much
Yeah. So if you
just
go,
whatever we try to adapt a method of selling it. If we can't license it, adapt a method of selling it that promotes the product the best.
right. And so you have, if you go to Creative Works, there's a storeroom there with stocks of different items,
Hmm.
and you have student employees who are packaging and shipping these in
Hmm.
response to
Yes,
orders.
yeah.
Yep. And so if someone wants to go and see what you're selling, where would they go? Online.
Creativeworks.byu.edu.
Okay. And then you have maybe links to outside sites for different products. Is that
Yes.
how it works?
Well, we have we've got a menu that has the different sites for the different types of products that we sell.
Okay.
So,
Terrific. And in doing this, what are some of the biggest challenges? And Giovanni, maybe this is a question for you. What are some of the biggest challenges in commercializing this type of IP from BYU?
Well, Creative Works, unlike technology transfer, where they deal with prototypes or just a patent,
Hmm.
we would deal with finished products. And in most cases, it's almost ready to be delivered because of it can be downloaded as a PDF or whatever form it's available in.
Hmm.
So the main idea is to make sure that everything that is in the product that we're trying to commercialize, it can be commercialized. So all the rights are taken care of. That's one of the
Right.
major issues that people that develop material make sure that you have you developed everything yourself, or if you didn't develop everything yourself, that you've received the permission and the rights to go ahead and make the product available. So
Hmm.
that is the most important issue. When it
And can I ask you on
yeah.
that point? So we have a copyright office next door as well. Do they help you vet those issues, make sure that we own everything in a product, or is that more something you guys do?
And if we can see that the product can be commercialized, we pay for the licensing fees
Okay.
that are necessary to make the product available.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the copyright licensing office usually helps faculty members obtain permission, even if the product is not going to be
So on
commercialized.
the front end, hopefully they've helped
Right,
them, but if there's an
right.
issue, you deal with it.
Then we deal with
Okay, perfect. All right. What do you think, Mary Jo? Any other challenges that you would point out in the process?
it's just kind of finding an audience for each one because
Hmm.
they can be so different. I
Hmm.
mean, massively different. And sometimes it's difficult finding a place to make it available for people.
Yeah, and how big an audience do you need? If a professor creates some work of art and you think there are 100 people in the world who might want to buy that, is it worth doing as a service to the faculty, or is there some kind of financial calculus?
Um, there's some when it's tangible property, we do have to um, look at the production price,
Because you have to recoup the cost.
the
Yeah,
duplication prices, yeah,
yeah.
because we have to recoup that. When it's a download, it's
yeah,
we can go from the professor walking in with a USB saying, "Here's my stuff," and an hour later we have it up and it's for sale.
right.
So that
So
kind of thing.
that's the beauty of our creative works is because most of the time the product is ready, so it can be commercialized right away as long as all the rights are taken care of.
Mhm.
And we do have, a lot of the products that were available 20 plus years ago still generating revenue today
Yes.
Yeah.
because of the nature of copyright.
Right.
And we have about 78 products here on campus that bring in revenue to BYU.
Mhm.
So,
And if people don't know, the period of copyright today, I think, is protection for life of the author plus 70 years. Is that right?
Yes.
It's different if it's work for hire, but it's still quite long. So
yeah. So the only problem with content is, unfortunately, it can become dated very quickly.
right.
And so that is one of the issues. Some of the products that we have, that have we made available are no longer viable because the content is dated.
Mhm.
And so even though the copyright is still valid, they won't sell because of the
Right.
content.
Right. Well, so one challenge I've thought about is we have there are plenty of entrepreneurs who come to tech transfer and look at our technologies and decide what to license. I think for local entrepreneurs, you might not be on the radar. What if an entrepreneur came in and said, "Look, I've seen this work that an author created. It could be software, it could be educational software. I want to create a business around that." That is an option, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we do that. We've been very successful in licensing a product to small software companies that which then became their main product line.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk about that one if you don't mind. We can go through some success stories.
Yes. One of the most, this is not the one that generated the most revenue, but it is one of my favorite products, is virtual lab simulations.
Mhm.
Which we initially developed with the help of some grants and the help of another entity on campus called the Center for Teaching and Learning, which used to help faculty members actually develop multimedia material. And we found a publisher, well, actually.
And what does the product do, just in case people aren't familiar?
These are the simulations of laboratories in chemistry, physics, and biology. So that the students can actually, high school students or first or second year college students can sit in front of the computer and be able to do some of the simulations that they need that can only be made available through that because it would be too expensive in a regular laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And so these have been actually the most successful when we count the number of people that actually use the software in the hundreds of thousands around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And initially we licensed it to one of the largest publisher, Pearson Publishing. And then, unfortunately, some of the material needed to be updated, but the publisher, they had a major upheaval in the publishing industry. They were no longer interested in doing upgrades of the product. So a startup, the developer was interested in actually creating a startup to continue developing the product. And so we licensed it eventually to this startup company.
Mm-hmm.
And that has brought in the virtual labs have brought in more than $2 million in royalties to BYU. So
that's great. And so and our royalties are reasonable. So the actual revenue produced by that product must be huge. And then another benefit, we want it out there where it can help people, which it's definitely doing. And I've talked to people who work for the startup company who use this product. This is creating like high-end jobs for BYU graduates and others in the community. So that's great.
excellent.
What I like is that the professor who developed that is also one of your developers.
Oh, who is it? You can say who it is.
Woodfield, Brian Woodfield.
Oh, that's right, exactly. Yeah, so that's right.
So we share a developer because we were able to develop that product, but then he's got inventions on your side too.
And that would be unusual because generally, I think people who would come to you with creative work would be maybe from the humanities or arts or something. At least that's got to be a lot of your people,
Mm-hmm.
and they tend not to think of themselves as commercial inventors. There are exceptions. There are some that are, but that's mostly the case, isn't it?
But we have several in yours in the sciences or technology.
Right. Yeah. If you're in the hard sciences, you're probably writing books or creating educational material, and that can be commercialized just like the hard technologies.
Yes.
So, okay, terrific. So how important are collaborations with industry entities? Like I mentioned that you have these great connections, Giovanni, but how does that work? How do you maintain those partnerships or relationships?
Well, you have to go to conferences and book fairs, and unfortunately, the publishing industry there is a high turnover, so you have to keep up with the new editors that are hired by the publishers. But it's the idea is to go ahead and see how the industry is evolving and to make the right connections with the right editors. Uh, there is always the situation that an editor will move from one publishing entity, a company, to another. But that also helps you sometimes down the road because if that publisher is not interested, you already know an editor in another publishing company that might still be interested in the product. The most important thing, though, is to go ahead and uh, work with publishers sometimes because we developed some software that was great, but it wasn't a finished product because it still needed some ancillary material that we didn't have. And when you work with a publisher, many times they might have those resources, and then you can create a more robust product because you collaborated with the publisher.
Yeah, and if you if you have a product like that and the publisher improves on it, typically would BYU have the right to use the improved product internally?
Yes, we always request that.
Yeah.
We always request that, we can use the material and usually at a discount price to our students.
And so if you're a professor and you've developed something as far as you want, say some software, most professors don't want to spend a lot of their time developing software to teach the students. But if you pair up with a partnership not a partnership, with a publishing company through Creative Works, you could potentially improve the product and have something better for you to use.
Yeah. That is always one of the benefits of working with publishers sometimes is because they can go ahead and bring some resources that are not available to you. But in most cases, though, BYU is a great university. They can develop some really good material if they have the resources. If the resources are not made available to the faculty member, that is the main question.
And I think this is one more thing we benefit in tech transfer too. Our faculty members, like the students, are incredibly entrepreneurial and they want to create things, and we just see a lot of that. Mary Jo, in where you're selling physical products, are there partnerships or collaborations with outside entities that matter to you, or is it mostly we're doing our thing?
It's mostly we're doing our thing. Yeah, the collaboration, usually technically licensing is a collaboration, and that's why Giovanni's side is more that collaborative that way.
So as I see it, people you collaborate with would be mostly student employees. You've had, at any given time, you're employing someone too.
Our professors too, because but I thought you meant off.
Oh, campus. Either way.
Yeah. But so like we've got one software that we are about freshwater invertebrates that we are converting to an app. We're working on that right now with the professor. Chaucer Studio is an ongoing version of that.
That is another success story. I mean, it's a really small, revenue-wise, it's not really that great. But so
this is Chaucer. Like, what's the ancient work that?
These are recordings of medieval writings. Okay. And so when you think of it, who wanted?
So it's audio versions.
It's audio versions of Chaucer.
Of the original dialects.
Of the original dialects. And the thing is we've been selling these products for over 20 years here on campus. But the main developer died a few years ago, and but luckily though we've been in touch with publishers all along, and finally we were able to license the Chaucer Studio to Bloomsbury Publisher in England, who is just for people who are not familiar with the name, they are the publishers of Harry Potter stories. But they also have an academic division which caters to libraries. And so we've been able to license the product to them, which will be made available next year.
But we still maintain our own website for it.
And we sell it still.
Yes, still.
But they market it to an audience that we can't go to, which is the libraries.
And luckily we had some contacts before the original developer passed away, and we were able to put together a board to direct the work now. And we make just enough money for them to do a new piece, a new product.
Add on some new audio thing, right?
Every year.
Well, that's great. So it's the Canterbury Tales. That's Chaucer, right?
That's it started off just Canterbury Tales, but they've expanded to other.
Okay, great. So this seems obscure. Like if this hit a tech transfer office, we'd all be like, that's so niche. It doesn't matter. But here you pursued it, and what we find out is actually no, it's a pretty large niche, and there are lots of academics who want to use it.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it's memorializing those old dialects that
Hmm.
would be lost. They would be getting lost now if they
Hmm.
couldn't pass it on this way.
Okay. Yeah. And so one question I was going to ask you is how your work commercializing these things impacts the original research work and the researchers involved. Like this is one way, right? They get to
Uh-huh.
keep going.
Yeah, keep
But do you
going.
see any
Yeah.
other impact that you have?
Well, the main thing is that many times the revenue that comes back to university goes back into development of other products.
Hmm.
BYU is very generous with the intellectual property policy, where 45% goes to the developer, but the university has a clause that says if the developer doesn't want to receive personally his portion of the revenue, but puts it back into research, that's matched by the university. So in most cases, faculty members take advantage of that, and then they can go ahead and put that money that they've received into creating other products, similar products.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. And so for an academic researcher, dealing with commercialization can seem like a hassle. Oh, this is going to take some work. But another thing that seems like a hassle is applying for grants for your research. So sometimes if you engage in the commercial part and then use that match,
yeah,
90% of that revenue is going to go into your
into
research.
research.
That can take a lot of pressure off.
And to bring some statistics into the conversation, almost 79% of the money that comes into the royalties, it goes into research.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
that's
amazing.
a lot of the faculty members say, hey, listen, I'm more interested in, pursuing my research than in actually receiving some revenue.
Hmm.
And so most of the money is put back into research.
Hmm. Even in tech transfer, professors can do this, and many of our professors do put at least some portion of the revenue into their research and get it matched. So it can be a really great thing, and it leads to new inventions that then hopefully we commercialize. So we talked about the revenue a little bit. Um, what other universities? So I've been at an autumn conference before. That's Association of University Technology Managers. That's kind of our industry organization. And you guys have been there too. I've heard Giovanni present on creative works at those conferences. And I think afterwards you get flocked with people from universities saying, we should do that. We totally need to do that at my university. And then it doesn't really happen. What would you tell someone who wants to start up a creative works?
Well, the main obstacle was the delivery of the creative works, and
Hmm.
most universities were not, geared up to go ahead and make the products available. We've been doing it for 27 years now,
Yeah.
so and we've been adapting because initially the main method of distribution was CDs and
Oh,
DVDs and
floppy disks.
well,
Back
even
then,
Yeah.
floppy
even
disks.
before that, floppy
Right.
disks. But now most of the products can be downloaded, so it's a lot easier. And I think that it's becoming more and more feasible for our technology transfer office to actually go after some creative works that university funded,
Right.
because it's a lot easier to make them available. You don't need a
Right.
fulfillment center to do that.
Hmm.
You only need to hire a few student programmers to go ahead and make the product available. So it's a
Hmm.
lot more feasible nowadays than when we started 27 years ago. It
Right.
was a lot harder back then because you had to distribute a physical product, and when you
Hmm.
distribute a physical product, that means you have to have inventory and so forth.
Mm.
Nowadays everything can
Hmm.
be made available online, so it's a lot easier for a technology transfer office to consider, say, yeah, we
Hmm.
can do this here too. And I think that it's going to happen that more and more. The only reason why it hasn't taken off yet is because they haven't done it in the past, so they
Right.
don't even look at it.
Right.
But I think that once they realize, hey, yes, we can make this available fairly easily. It's not automatic, but it can be done fairly easily. Then you're going to see a lot more university technology transfer offices
Hmm.
making creative works available.
Yeah, knowing what I know now from being here, if I were to go to another university and be to another tech transfer office, if I were looking at, hey, how can we innovate here? One thought I would think is let's start a creative works, even if it's just a part of tech transfer. Let's just have some person that's
Dedicated to it.
that's getting all this stuff out into the world. Why not? Why hold it up in the university when other people could be using it? So, okay, so in terms of future trends, hopefully that's a future trend. Every once in a while, something happens that seems disruptive. Creative work started just as the internet was getting off the ground. There must have been some moment where you thought, wait, does the internet change all of this, or make this less important? But no, it doesn't. We're still people
Oh
still
yeah, yeah.
just buy in a different format, right? But so now there's AI, and people are talking about whether that's a threat to art. What do you see as trends in your industry going forward?
Well, the main thing that university have to be aware of is that this is a evolving business,
Hmm.
and you have to be fairly flexible in how you make things available. But like I said, it's become a lot easier nowadays to go ahead and make creative works available. Now the thing is, what has to change, I think, is the mentality that uh, you know creative works. The main obstacle is that the developer thinks that it's his product. He
Right,
developed it.
right,
Uh, the only reason university gets involved is when they funded the project.
right.
Okay.
Hmm.
Otherwise, that we don't get involved. If the faculty member just uses these computers to develop something, it belongs to him.
Hmm.
But universities have to be aware that when very expensive equipment is being used to create the product, then there is the
Hmm.
question as, hey, that's a substantial use in university resources,
Yeah.
and so the university should go after it. But in most cases, the universities don't even look at it because they say, I don't think it's worth it because it's
Hmm.
not going to bring in that much money anyway.
Hmm.
What BYU did differently was the fact that we decided to be a service oriented department,
Right.
and that we were there mainly to make sure the faculty members didn't have to worry about if they wrote something, that felt that was good make available outside of BYU to and if we could produce any revenue, that university made it possible so that they didn't have to worry about the distribution, that they
Hmm.
didn't have to worry about taxes or the financial
Right.
aspects of it. And so that is the main threat to technology, to creative works, is the fact that, down the road, it will be a lot easier to develop things, and
Hmm.
and there's going to be a lot more material
Yeah.
and fewer possibilities for commercialization.
Okay.
That is the
So
main thing.
supply and demand. If there's an
Supply demand.
explosion of content,
Exactly.
content should be worth less.
That's right.
But
Usually that's the case.
somehow I always feel like I read the book by Chris Anderson, The Long Tail, which was maybe 20 years ago or close now, and he was predicting it was the end of big hits, that everything was going to be more stuff selling fewer units each. And he's got a point with self-publishing and these other technologies. There is a lot of that, but we still seem to have big hits. So
Yeah, no, you
Yeah,
always have to be
the
aware
blockbusters.
that once in a
yeah.
while you're going to hit, something that is very successful, and you have
Hmm.
to be able to take care of it, either
Hmm.
by licensing it or by making it available online where people can download it fairly easily.
Hmm. And people don't understand that in tech transfer and for you in creative works, we feel pressure. Like if something great is created at the university, we don't want to fail to get that out into the world, right? Like if there's a cure for cancer, ooh, we better patent that and get
Yeah.
that licensed, because we want people to be cured. So, okay, well, those are some great trends. Mary Jo, any other in your area where you're selling physical products or downloadable products? I guess one trend is the conversion of everything to digital.
Mhm.
Like people still, um, I guess we're finally at the point where people pretty much don't use DVDs, where it's pretty much downloads, right?
Yes,
Or
it's mostly downloads. We still have a few
yeah,
that
Because all
do the
generations still
of
yes,
course,
use,
yes.
yeah, there is
Um,
that.
but in most cases, most new technology transfer offices don't have to worry about that because
Yeah.
the audience that they have is fairly, well, it's different. They're younger.
Hmm.
And while we've been dealing it for the past 30 years, so we still have clients that are used
Hmm.
to have a physical product.
Hmm.
But down the road, I think that's not going to be an issue.
Hmm.
but a lot of our stuff that we had been shipping out 2 decades ago,
Hmm.
now we've licensed actually to a streaming company,
Okay.
and so that was another that's making
Yeah,
some
there
of
are
our
Yeah.
opportunities
60-year-old.
out there.
Yeah,
Streaming became a great opportunity before, even though before we were selling DVDs. Now we don't sell DVDs any longer, but it's still a valid product and it can be made available through streaming.
Okay, and you made a comment that was interesting a minute ago, Giovanni, where you were talking about people knowing to disclose these technologies to creative works. So for anyone who doesn't know, at a university, just like at a major company, things created by employees are generally going to belong to the employer, to the university. Like Giovanni explained, the university here is very generous with how it shares revenue with inventors, but things that the university pays for are owned by the university generally. If you're an academic researcher and you invent something, you go ahead and disclose it to Creative Works. And not only is that consistent with the policy, but that means that you don't have to become an accountant and a lawyer and a business person to get it out into the world. You can just make movies. You don't have to become a movie distributor, right? And so that's kind of the essence of the service, I think. But just as a last question, what advice would you give aspiring innovators? Say you work at BYU or some other university and you create something, an academic work, say some curriculum, software or something. What are your tips for them? What's the best way for them to succeed?
Well, just come and talk to us. We're more
Yeah.
than happy to explore different ways to make the product available for you, and take the nuisance of commercializing a product. We've been doing this for a long time, so let
Yeah.
us help you.
Yeah.
And we'd be more than happy to go ahead and get you in our long list of developers that we've had here at BYU.
Yeah. And Giovanni and Mary Jo, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I think people at BYU are very aware of what you're doing, and it's clever, and you've adapted and done really smart things here at BYU that are a great service to people outside BYU. A little bit like tech transfer is easy to fly under the radar, so hopefully people know now. So,
Have them
and if they have
contact us.
questions, reach out to you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If they have questions about anything,
We'll try to answer any questions.
Yes.
Yeah, they're super accessible. So,
helpful.
all right. Well, thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another episode.